Good evening and welcome to this week's edition of CopaLoadofRacing, where we're going to look at Newmarket's Future Champions Day, part of the Future Champions weekend, where of course the Dewhurst is the highlight. Also look at the Cesarewitch and a couple of races at York. Been a busy week, of course, with the last weekend's Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe at Longchamp. Fantastic victory for Enable, of course, managing to hold on at the line from the fast charging Sea of Class. Frustrating for myself. I had backed Sea of Class, and frustrating for, I'm sure, some of you out there who had maybe backed the William Haggis filly as well. Poor draw it had. I thought James Doyle did as best as he can on the honour. He really did try everything. Settled her in behind, made the run when he could. He was obviously going to encounter traffic because of the size of the field, but it was just on another day it would have been his race, and Sea Class would have won, but not on Sunday. But credit to Enable, phenomenal to return again after only that return race at Kempton. To put in a performance like that was very impressive. Few issues I've seen in the press and people who attended the weekend at Longchamp. Not too happy with the facilities, with what was on offer. A lot of people disappointed by that. Something that France Gallup, those that organise French racing, are going to look at for next year. There was obvious that there was going to be some teething problems, but you would have thought that the racecourse has been in action this year anyway. It's not as if that was the first weekend of racing since its renovation, but hopefully they can iron out some of those issues. We heard sometimes after when Ascot was renovated there was some dissatisfaction amongst some of the punters that were attending some of the racegoers, but something to bear in mind for Longchamp and French racing overall. But the racing was of a good standard. Punting wise it wasn't the greatest, but we move on. We are reaching the climax of the flat racing season. There's this weekend and then next weekend's Champions Day, and that wraps it up in terms of the Jockeys Championship and everything else. But there is still some decent enough cards to be looked at in terms of flat racing on the turf. We then really, as of the weekend after Champions Day, get stuck into some of the early fare when it comes to jumps racing. Chepstow have a good card on tomorrow as well, worth bearing in mind if you're wanting to take in some jumps racing. Chepstow's card's pretty good tomorrow. And then, as I say, it builds from there with the Cheltenham's Open meeting, and then building on to the likes of Wetherby with the Charlie Hall Chase and so on. Before we get back to the likes of Cheltenham again for their big November meeting. But anyway, looking at tomorrow, and probably one of the biggest Group 2 races, Group 1 races for 2-year-olds is Dewhurst. It's a well-respected race, great winners down the years, of course, and I think it's a cracking field tomorrow. You have the likes of Advertise, the July Stakes winners in there. Anthony Van Dyke, who was second in the National Stakes over in Ireland, is a Group 2 winner in its own right. Mohawk, who won the Royal Lodge a couple of weeks ago. You have Stangarius, who has looked impressive in its 2 starts, winning a listed race recently at Doncaster. And then you have Too Darn Hot, the favourite, this John Gosling horse, who won the Champagne Stakes at Doncaster and has really looked impressive. Frankie Tuttori was pretty blown away by how well it performed at Doncaster. It's a fantastic race really to get delve into, and it's one of those races where you just want to see quality just brim here, and Too Darn Hot I would love to see go on and win it. And it would be great to see the others like Stangarius, the Michael Stout horse, really come on for its performances of late and show that there's going to be some really good prospects going into next season as 3-year-olds. Too Darn Hot I've been really impressed with it in its recent starts, particularly that performance at Doncaster in the Champagne. Frankie is raving about this horse, really impressed with it, particularly from the second to the final furlong pole in that Champagne. And Rook's a real serious contender. I think the other four horses that I've mentioned have all certainly got credentials and can certainly kick on from there. A lot will be looking at what the ground will be at Newmarket. I think the way the weather forecast looks tomorrow, that Newmarket may possibly miss all the rain that we're getting here up in Scotland and down the west and coast of England and into Wales, and over in Ireland there's been quite a lot of heavy rain. But Newmarket probably will miss that, so it could still possibly be racing on faster ground, but we'll see what tomorrow brings. But cracking race at 3 o'clock, that Dewhurst, really exciting, and there's a couple of good 2-year-old races prior to that as well, the Zetland and the Autumn Stakes, so plenty of good 2-year-old races, but too darn hot for the star for me tomorrow. The other big race at Newmarket tomorrow is their big handicap of the day, the Cesarewitch, a big 2-mile handicap, of course, with plenty of contenders there. Willie Mullins is sending over quite a few. Southern France from the Aidan O'Brien stable is also coming over and is at the moment at the head of the market. But it's one of Willie Mullins' horses that I do like. It's Stratum, who won the JLT at Newbury. Was well punted that day, if you remember, and won pretty impressively. Followed that up in the Ebor, got bumped around a little, never really got a run out near the end, but I think this horse has a touch of class about it, and will appreciate this 2-mile trips as it did at Newbury. Massive field, of course, but I always feel in the Cesarewitch, personally speaking, I don't think there's ever any excuses really. It's always a wide run across that rolly mile track. So I think Stratum, I would pick out at the head of the market. Of those at the head of the market, this horse for me is the one to be on side with. In terms of each way punts, the Glasgow Warrior, Jim Goldie's horse, has been in fair form this season, winning at the likes of Hamilton and Musselburgh. I think it won at Newcastle as well earlier this season, and then had a brilliant race in the Mallard at Doncaster, and really did put in a fine performance at a big price that day. So if it can follow up in that form, need to probably improve a little bit more to get in the reckoning in this race, but certainly has the scope to do so. Has been consistent enough sort all season. And will like a strong pace again to aim at, and it should get that in this race. And like most of Jim Goldie's horse, likes to come in off the pace, and is in with a fair chance. Also, Paul Nicholls' horse Cliffs of Dover was also in that Mallard race. Again, never got a really clear run near the end, and I think it will appreciate this extra 2 furlongs that it faced in the Mallard. So Cliffs of Dover for Paul Nicholls, I think another one at an each way punt could have you hopefully taking some money off the bookies. So Stratum on the nose, but an each way flutter on both the Glasgow Warrior and Cliffs of Dover. Right, over to York for their meeting, their final meeting of the year. I was at this corresponding meeting actually last year where the weather was completely different. It was very much like the weather people were experiencing earlier on in this week. Nice sort of late summer conditions. York, I think, will get some of the rain tomorrow. It looks like maybe not as much as what other places, as I've said, are experiencing, but it may get a few downpours, and maybe early in the morning. So looking at that race, I'm looking at 2 races. 205, the first race on the card. Eric the Red, I think, is starting to progress really well and looks like he's coming into some bit of form. Finished third recently at Ayr. If there is a bit of cut in the ground, I don't think he'll mind that at all. This Kevin Ryan horse. So Eric the Red for me at an each way bet. I think it's around about 12 to 1 at the moment. So with a wee each way flutter there. And then the 240, the Rockingham Stakes for two 2-year-olds, yeah. Dave Dexter won well at Ayr last time out. Loves soft conditions, so if it is to go soft at York, this horse really excels in this type of condition. Similar type of race it's going to face tomorrow as it did at Ayr, and I see no reason if that is the case that this will give favourite backers their money returning. So Dave Dexter in that. Then follow that up in the Coral Sprint Trophy, a horse that's again I'm looking at that's maybe an improvement. Brian the Snail for Richard Fahey is always, I think, been well thought of. It had a bright start to its career, so much so that Godolphin purchased it. It's not really shown much since then, and middle of the season hasn't been great, but it ran in the Ayr Gold Cup last time out, and it finished in where it was. It ran a pretty good race in the group that I was headed, the group that it was involved in. It's coming down the handicap, so it's off a decent mark now, and so I think Brian the Snail could run well in that race at a bigger price. Okay, so that's my thoughts on tomorrow's racing. As I say, next weekend it is Champions Day at Ascot. I will look probably to get you a CopaLoadofRacing vlog on the channel. Maybe it will be Saturday. I'll try if I can, because I'm going on holiday. I'll do what I can for to do that. If not, I'll just put up the tips on the Twitter account at the GMcD. If you're looking for that CopaLoadofRacing, search for that as well on Twitter and you should find it. Okay, have a good weekend, folks, in terms of racing or whatever you're up to. If you're going racing, I hope the weather wherever you are racing isn't as bad as forecast, and possibly see you next week. CopaLoadofRacing, folks.